front page of the Daily Telegraph, the front page of the Daily Mail, and the front page of the Times, which says that Kemi Badenoch will accuse sexual predators and activist campaign groups of abusing Britain's equalities in a speech today, pledging to protect the privacy and dignity of women and girls. And I'm pleased to say Business and Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch is here to give more details. You write a first-person piece, which is very powerful in the Times this morning, Secretary of State, about a letter you received from someone who's suffered some rather appalling behaviour. For those who haven't read the article, can you briefly recap what you wrote? Morning.
Good morning, Nick. Yes, I received this letter, which was heartwarming in the sense that she was thanking us for the work that we'd done, but also really distressing. It was a lady who had two very worrying incidents. One of them a rape in a women's toilet from a man who was wearing makeup. And she asked that we do more to protect single-sex spaces. And I talked about what that lady had written to me and what we were doing in order to clarify the law and provide more protections.
And so what is it?
I would like to say, Nick, that I'm not giving a speech this evening. I don't know why the Times wrote that. That's not true.
My apologies. Well, think of this as a speech, if you will, Ms. Badenoch, if that's okay. What is it you and the government are seeking to do then to address this?
So we are clarifying that the word sex in the Equality Act means biological sex and not any new redefined term. In law, the words sex and gender are used interchangeably. However, the way we speak now, we use them to mean quite different things. And that is creating a lot of confusion. We had some court judgments, the Haldane one in particular, that said legal sex, which you can change, is the same as biological sex for the purposes of the law. We had what the SNP was doing in Scotland with gender recognition. And we think we just need to put this to bed once and for all, create some clarity so that people know what they can and cannot do. There's just so much confusion, and that's what we're going to be doing. So in essence, it shouldn't be a change. It's just restating the intention of the law as it was written.
What will this mean for hospital wards, prison cells, lavatories, Secretary of State?
Yes, so for instance, with prisons, we've had concerns from prison governors, the Ministry of Justice, about whether the law allows them to stop men from being put in women's prisons if they identify as being trans. This was something that we saw in Scotland with the case of Isla Bryson, where a rapist was put into a women's prison. This settles it once and for all. There shouldn't be any matter of it going to an employment tribunal or a court. Clarifying that sex means biological sex just means that a lot of those instances where people aren't sure what to do because they don't know what legal sex is versus biological sex or sex and gender will just stop.
So where would someone who is transitioning, let's say it's a male transitioning to a female, where would they go to jail then?
So it all depends on what we mean by transitioning. This is one of the areas where we're trying to bring some clarity. Right. If you, Nick, simply decide after you've committed a crime that you're now a woman, I think people should be able to decide whether that is transitioning or not. But of course, where we see people who have had sex reassignment surgery and so on, there are exceptions which can be made for that. But the vast majority of people who are exploiting the loophole do not fall into those categories.
What if I'm only halfway through, Secretary of State?
Either way, you will be put where your biological sex is what is going to determine that. There is no perfect solution. So there is, in the same way that somebody transitioning from one gender to another will not find one particular institution particularly preferable for them. Okay. We need to create clarity so that people know what to do. And at the moment, public authorities don't.
So we could have a situation where someone who is a biological male and is transitioning, but, and I'll put this delicately, has only had the top half done and not the lower half, will find himself or theirself put in a male prison, is my understanding.
I think that is right, and okay. I do believe that in some instances that happens today, but that is what is always would have happened prior to changes in law in the 2000s. So we want to make sure that, first of all, we are protecting the people who are most vulnerable. So this is about protecting vulnerability. Who is most likely to be harmed? Who needs protection? There should be some discretion, of course, with certain cases, but we cannot have situations where we're putting rapists in women's prisons.
Indeed.
Those are the things that we're most bothered by, and they're happening more frequently, and we want to put a stop to it.
And which lavatory should a trans person avail themselves of?
It depends on what the service provider has put out. And, I was on your show not that long ago talking about building regulations that we've put in. We want people to have privacy and dignity. This is about protecting those who are vulnerable. It is not about stopping trans people from having privacy and dignity. That's why we have said that you should have unisex toilets. A disabled toilet is an example of that. But where there are shared spaces, they should be on the basis of biological sex.
So that would mean someone who's, let's say I chose to dress this afternoon as a woman, I would have to use the men's lavatory.
Yes. Yes. Just changing your clothes. Changing your clothes doesn't change who you are. We want people who are trans to be protected as well. People who want to change their clothes should not be able to exploit the scenarios we have prepared and the laws we put in place to protect those people who are genuine transgender people, those who suffer from gender dysphoria. Just putting on a different set of clothes does not make you transgender.
Noting the newspaper from which I'm taking some of the details has got it wrong about the speech. It says you will accuse activist campaigns of abusing Britain's equality laws. What are those activist campaigns?
Oh, well, I wasn't going to give a speech, but there are, I still don't know where they got that from, but there are campaigns that have, Stonewall is one of the classic examples. They put out lots of guidance. Employers were signing up to their schemes and being measured on how well they were following the guidance, which was not the law. It was actually the opposite of the law. And quite a few people, in fact, I think Alison Bailey still has a court case going where they are suing Stonewall for some of the problems that they've created in their careers. A lot of people have lost jobs. A lot of people have lost livelihoods because Stonewall has either gone after them or put out guidance that has been used to hound them out of their workplaces. And all of these people, quite a lot of them gender critical women, are winning their court cases. They're winning their tribunals.
On a related issue, some campaigners have called for the family of a deceased trans or non-binary person, such as Brianna J., to posthumely change their gender on their death certificate. Would that be something that would gain support from the Conservatives?
Well, we certainly have no plans. We have no plans to do that. What we are trying to do right now is provide clarity and remove confusion in this space. I don't think that creating more new policy in this area should be done until we actually settle many of the issues that are outstanding. And there are still quite a lot of issues that are outstanding. We understand why people might want to do that, but we're doing this in order of where there are problems, where vulnerable people are being harmed, and what we can do to provide more security and safety for them. And we're the only party who will do this. I've heard that Labour has said this is not needed. It absolutely is needed. But as we saw with the SNP and Labour supporting them, Lib Dems, no one else is serious about this except Conservatives.
Let's move to a couple of other matters, if we may. The sometimes extraordinary treatment that Diane Abbott has received from the Labour Party, some are suggesting is in part driven by her colour, her race. Do you concur?
I don't think so. Lloyd Russell Moyle was removed from the Labour Party after a complaint. I don't think he's not a black woman. I think it's hard for me to comment on Labour Party issues because I don't really understand what they do or why they do them. But it does not appear to me to be because of her race.
Well, let's come to Conservative issues then. The Prime Minister and Victoria Atkins, your colleague, will be talking about 100 new GP surgeries and 150 to be revamped. You're aware how many have closed over the last 8 years, are you? There are 700 fewer surgeries than there were in 2016. So while it's encouraging to hear that collectively there's 250 more on the way, you're nowhere near bridging the gap from those that have closed, Kemi Badenoch.
Well, we know that this is an issue that needs tackling. I would start by asking, why are GP surgeries closing? People are retiring because of tax treatment. We've tried to address that. That's another area where I think that we're different from the Labour Party. A lot of people choosing to go to work in other countries where they have privatised healthcare systems. So we have a challenge because there's a lot of competition, but we are doing everything we can. Prime Minister brought in last year the NHS long-term workforce plan. So there's a lot that we're doing to make sure that people are trained up to work in the health service. Obviously, we can't force people to keep surgeries open. We're working as hard and as fast as we can. And I think that's what the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary will be talking about more later today.
But you've been in power your party has been in power for 14 years, of course, Secretary of State.
Yes, that means that when you're in power for a long period of time, you will see a lot of change. We've seen increases. We've seen, as you talked about, changes in the number of surgeries. But we are there to make sure that we keep working and we keep improving things. It doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen, but we are the ones who have a plan to tackle issues when they arise.
All right, final question. Another newspaper, not the one in which you feature, is reporting that Nigel Farage is looking to take over the Conservative Party after it fails in this year's general election, which is his belief, and reshape the centre-right. Would you be happy to serve alongside Nigel Farage?
No. Nigel Farage has stood against many Conservatives, including some of my colleagues. What he wants to do is destroy the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is an institution. It is the longest running party in the history of the world. And I think that what we should be talking about is how to make sure it keeps going from strength to strength, not about trashing it or destroying it or taking it over.
You can get more details on Kemi Badenoch's plan in the Times newspaper today. The headline, Tory vow to end abuse of gender laws. My thanks to the Secretary of State for Business and Trade, appearing here on LBC.